Hi guys, here's just an update on my Walker mower. I was going to do a bunch of videos on what I've done to it. It was kind of a lot of little things that really were kind of a pain in the neck to videotape. So I decided not to. I just went ahead and I figured at this point I would just go ahead and give you a little walk around and show you some of the things that I've done. I'll just kind of start from the back, I guess. I noticed the frame on the back under the bagger was a little crooked. I unbolted a couple of bolts right there and then on the other side and kind of straightened it out. Not really a big deal, more of just a visual thing that I've been wanting to do, so I took care of that. I cleaned the bagger up a little bit. This one I just put on about 2 months ago, used. I found this bagger, it had a few cracks in it. I'll show you some of the repairs that I did to it. I think I paid $200 for the whole unit, which was a great deal. I had the 7 bushel before that, and I had been trying to find one of these forever. My last couple of walkers had this, the larger size on it, which is kind of the normal size nowadays. So I got that. In the back, I finally, you see in the previous video, I bought a new screen. I got that in there. As far as the chute goes, the oscillator on my last 3 walkers has not worked. They bag fine without it. The only problem is you don't know when it's full, but as you get to use them year after year, you kind of can tell by the sound of the suction, and you can kind of pretty much guess when it's about full. So I've yet to fix it. The motor, I believe, is gone. Like I said, there's the last 3 walkers I had, the oscillator didn't work, properly. Or the oscillator would work and the beeper wouldn't. This one's just hanging there. So it still disperses the grass. It still fills up the bag just fine. Like I said, I don't see a reason at this point to change it. I may in the future if I get really picky. One of the things I just did is replace, it's kind of hard to see in here, but I replaced the metal chute. I don't know what you call it, a metal shield inside the plastic chute. What happens is the grass and leaves that pass by it wear the old metal out, and then it goes through the plastic chute on the top, which this one did. I'll see if I can get up there. You can see it's got a good hole in it. When I got this used bagger, that's the way it came. It didn't even have the metal chute in there, so I replaced that. This is the little repair that I did on the corner of the bagger where you lift the handle up. It kind of had some cracks. And it was starting to fatigue there, so I just cut a few pieces of metal in various shapes to kind of fill over the cracks and riveted in, which is fine. It's not to win shows, it's just for working. So let me close this up. So I got that done. Still want to replace these rear wheels on the back of the catcher here. They're kind of chunky. Those really kind of have to be smooth to do their job. If you rub up against something, just to prevent damage on people's property. Let me pull the bagger up. The gas tank, this is the first time I'd ever done this. This gas tank was almost black. I took it out, cleaned it up really good. I let it sit in some bleach for a while. Cleaned it up the best I could. It isn't perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. The main reason I did it is through the years, a bunch of grass and debris gets stuck in between both sides of the tank, and it just builds up more and more and more and more, and it ended up, I was probably losing, I don't know, maybe 1/4 gallon of the capacity of the gas tank just because the sides were pushed in, a good, I would say, 3/4 of an inch on either side. So that was the main reason. I wanted to get in there and clean up the frame on the inside there, and I treated the rust and whatnot that was in there. In the process, you have to remove this shut-off valve down here and the grommet. I replaced that as well. I think it was like $11 plus shipping to get that. Those 2 pieces was kind of a little bit of a bear to do. So I did that. This rear shock or stabilizer for the bagger, that basically helps you lift it up and holds it up so it doesn't fall down. I replaced that. Here's the bottom side of my repair. You can see the crack that came down here and around. It's common where you're lifting the handle up and down all the time. It kind of cracks here and works its way back. So I just kind of strengthened it up, put some washers in here so it's catching this metal bracket for support, and it's pretty sturdy now, so that'll do for now. Other than that, I did a full oil change. You know, I put synthetic fluid. This motor, I don't know how many hours are on it now. It's my 3rd season, I believe, since I replaced it. It's probably got 400 hours, I would say. I'm totally just guessing, I don't know, but I put a new long block 20 horsepower Kohler in it. I think it was around $1,600. That's the biggest expense I've ever had on this machine. The deck, my center T-box was leaking. I had to replace a bearing and a seal in that, which is inside here. There's the drive shaft. I'm about ready for a new one of those. It's got a little excess play in there, a little more than it should, and it increases vibrations and can wear out your deck boxes a little faster. Another thing, before this bracket, this tab had broken off, and I bolted the spring to this hole temporarily to get through the season. I looked online to buy a new one. I couldn't find one anywhere, so I ended up cutting and welding this tab, just copying what was on this side. I cut it, ground it down, and welded it on, and threw a coat of paint on it just to make it look nice and stop it from rusting. And no sooner did I do that, I go on you know, Google or one of my parts sites, and what pops up, that same clip for $8 you can buy brand new. It was a spring, you know, spring bracket, I think it was called. Couldn't find it anywhere, but Google, knowing that I was searching for certain things, apparently I overlooked it and found it. So I didn't order a new one because the weld's fine, it looks fine. But I will know in the future if that breaks. You can get those, like I said, they're about $8 to replace. So I did that. What else did I do? I just kind of touched up the sides of the deck. There were, you know, extra scrapes. They get all beat up on the side just to make it look a little more presentable. I cleaned up that. I had a baffle under the deck that was loose, so I re-welded that, scraped down the hole underneath the deck, cleaned that up, so everything looks good under there. The chute that's going into the blower itself, it's hard to see without light in here, of course, but that was had a hole that was worn through near where the drive shaft is, so I'm thinking maybe it was rubbing a little bit and wore a hole through it. I'm not sure, but I put a metal reinforcement in there to prevent that. I replaced the choke cable, so we now have a working choke cable and throttle cable. I've been without a choke cable for, I don't know, a couple of seasons since it's broke. Like I said, I just kind of went through to replace anything that it could need. What else did I do? Inside here, the GHS blower. This one's been replaced before. The whole blower I replaced. You can still see some water in there from when I hosed it off. This is the replacement blower I put in. It had since, in I think about a season and a half, it wore through right through here where it normally does. So I last season took this blower housing out and welded in this reinforcement, which I've seen some even come with right from the factory, you know, replacement blower units with that on there, that reinforcement. So it's obviously a point of failure. And I replaced, as you can see inside here, the impeller, pressed that out with the bearing and whatnot that was in there. Not too bad to do. That was $96, and as opposed to replacing the whole blower housing, which is like $360, $380, which is what I did last time. So this time when the blower, the impeller is worn down, I'll replace the whole unit and kind of do the blower every other time that I replace that. Just kind of went through, did an overall check, a little spring I had to replace, could still use a little cleaning up. I fixed the wire going down to the starter that you can't see because it's too dark, of course. That was kind of loose, so I soldered the wire onto the connector, cleaned it all up really good, put some protectant on it, so that's not going to be an issue in the future. Then battery I replaced, although it's filthy. I replaced that mid-season last year when that died on me, so that's good to go. I put new fluid when I did the seal in the T-box for the mower blades, so that's all set. So I have new fluid in there, new fluid and filter on the engine, cleaned the air filter out, lubed all the grease fittings and points and whatnot. A couple little nuts and bolts were missing here and there that I had to put in it, which I have replaced. Kind of drove around a little, adjusted the tracking so it went as straight as possible. The seat I put on last season, so that's 1 season old. There's no rips in it yet. Let's see what else. I guess that's about it. Just kind of an overall going around adjustment. I still have last year's blades on it. I have a few more spring cleanups to do, and before I put a brand new fresh set of blades on there, I'm just going to hack up the old ones, sucking up the debris that I have to finish. And then I'll put the the new blades on and be ready for the cutting season. Oh, the other thing, the blade engagement brake. When you put this down, there's a little metal band that goes around your pulley on your PTO box that slows down the blades. That nut had backed off and got lost. It's supposed to be a nylon lock nut, and somebody replaced it with a regular nut, and it just came apart. So I straightened that band out, cleaned it up, put a locking nut that's supposed to be on it, and adjusted that so the blade brakes works well. Had to free this clip up was jammed up, and the handle, everything was kind of loose, so just kind of, or that was too tight, I should say. So I did that, and pretty much ready for the season. I mean, this is a 1997 unit. Like I said, it's not going to win any shows, but overall, I've been through it, a few times now. I just keep replacing what it needs, and keeps going and going and going. At this point, it's reading, it's reading 3,300 hours. The hour meter stopped working, I don't know, probably 4 or 5, or 6, 7 seasons ago. I'd be willing to bet it has, 5,000, 6,000 hours on it now. Like I said, I just keep going with it, and there's some more things I can do in the future. The next round, I'm sure next season I'll be replacing that entire blower. I still got to replace this tire. It's a little worn. It's got a tube in it right now. I'd like to get a new one on that. Halfway through the season, I replaced this one, so I'd like to match that. So I'll do that at some point. That drive shaft I'd like to replace at some point soon. The deck shell is like $760. I've re-welded all the insides once already. Pulled the old sheet metal out and all the baffling and re-welded that. That was kind of a project. I think I probably won't do that again. I'll just go with a new deck shell this time, and I'd like to maybe repaint these couple of little brackets and whatnot when I do that, because the tractor unit itself is in pretty good shape. The deck's a little banged up, not too bad. The wheels are still in decent shape. I cleaned those up a little. So overall, it's still a pretty presentable machine for what it is. I think I paid, gonna laugh at this, I think it was $850 for this mower when I first got it. Got to be 7 years now. And I've been using it ever since. It did run, it smoked a little. I did a mild rebuild on the engine that was in it. I just put new rings in it and seals and bearings, and I'm not even sure if there was bearings involved. I don't think there was, but I got another season and a half out of that engine. I had another used engine that I put in it that I got for pretty much nothing. Ran that for a couple of seasons, and then I finally broke down and put the brand new motor in it, which was the biggest expense I have on this mower. I would say through the 7 years, I've got, let's see, including the initial purchase, I've got probably $3,500 tops into this machine. And that's through a total of mowing for, like I said, 7 seasons. Granted, it only mows about, I would say, 10 to 12 hours, maybe 15 hours a week on average in the growing season, which is only about 7 months here on Cape Cod. But knowing how to do your own mechanics has saved a ton between trucks, trailers, mowers, electrical, all that stuff. It's definitely something that, you might want to, go to YouTube. There's a lot of guys out there with tutorials and, some of the things that I'm doing, not really the tutorials at this point, but I'd like to put a few up there. Pick yourself up a little welder. Like I just got this little crappy $100-something welder. Works fine for sheet metal up to, 1/8 of an inch thick or whatever, angle iron. I make my own brackets and, just learn how to weld. It's fun, little stuff. Any of the metal on this machine can be welded with that, anything that breaks. So it's you know, kind of a little it's an upkeep. The walker mowers are kind of a child. There's always something that, you know, is on the edge of breaking, and you know, usually it gets you through, and you know, might shut you down for a day or so if you can fix things yourself. But I wouldn't. There's no other mower out there I'd rather have at this point, and I will continue with these. I had two at one point. I'm just a small. I only had, I think, my largest in the last company was 3 trucks running around. So, all right, that's about it for this video. Have a good night.